Until quite recently, the map of late human evolution was considered fully drawn. You had Homo sapiens expanding out of Africa and Neanderthals occupying Europe and parts of Asia. For decades, those were the only recognized players on the board. But 90,000 years ago, the Altai Mountains in Siberia hosted a very different reality. In 2008, researchers excavating the dirt floor of Denisova cave were sifting through thousands of shattered animal bones. Down in the prehistoric refuse, they isolated a single unassuming fragment of a juvenile's pinky finger. That tiny piece of bone contained enough data to expand the late human family tree by an entirely new branch. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute extracted and sequenced the bone's mitochondrial DNA. Because this specific type of genetic material passes in an unbroken chain strictly from mother to daughter, it serves as a highly accurate tool for tracing distinct lineages. This chart visualizes the genetic distance between late human species. If you compare modern humans and Neanderthals, the genetic sequences differ by exactly 202 base pairs. But the DNA from the pinky bone plots completely off the previous scale. It showed 385 genetic differences, indicating a split from our common human ancestor roughly 1 million years ago. The numbers provided absolute proof of a distinct species, but researchers faced a major problem. They had no skeleton, no skull, and no facial structure to identify them. For the first time in scientific history, a human ancestor was defined entirely by a genome in search of a physical fossil. They became known as the Denisovans, a biological ghost. Human evolution operates like a braided stream. Distinct lineages separate across deep time, then weave back together to swap genes. We pinpoint this crossing at Denisova 11, a bone fragment found in 2012. Her DNA revealed a full-blooded Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. Statistically, finding a first-generation hybrid in a cave that has yielded only a tiny handful of fossils is nearly impossible, unless that specific type of interbreeding was a frequent, common occurrence. Ancient human species did not live in isolated, competitive bubbles. They participated in a highly interactive, cosmopolitan ancient world where different populations regularly met and mated. To see what these people actually looked like, we have to move to Harbin, China, 1933. While building a bridge over a river, a Chinese laborer dug a massive, unusual skull out of the river mud. Knowing its historical value and determined to hide it from occupying Japanese forces, the laborer wrapped the skull up and dropped it down an abandoned well. It sat there completely undisturbed for nearly 90 years. When scientists finally analyzed it in 2021, they found a cranium with a brain capacity matching our own, but encased in entirely different architecture. The skull featured thick brow ridges, absolutely huge teeth, with absolutely no chin. Researchers eventually managed to extract ancient proteins and a highly degraded trace of DNA from a single tooth left in the jaw. When they sequenced the sample, it matched the Denisovan genome from Siberia perfectly. After a decade of searching, science finally had a face for the biological ghost. The Denisovans were highly robust, powerfully built humans, distinctly adapted to harsh, freezing climates. Their adaptability allowed them to command a massive geographic territory. Denisovan populations spanned from hunting woolly rhinos on the Siberian steppes all the way down to surviving in the steaming tropical jungles of Southeast Asia. In Denisova cave, archaeologists uncovered a polished greenstone bracelet dating to a time before modern humans occupied the area. The stone was carefully shaped and featured a hole drilled with a high-speed rotational tool. Further south, near a hot spring in Tibet, researchers found a series of handprints and footprints pressed deliberately into fossilized mud. They were left by Denisovan children playing in the dirt nearly 200,000 years ago. These artifacts dismantled the long-held bias that only Homo sapiens possessed a deep aesthetic sense, forward planning, and complex culture. If the Denisovans were so highly capable and globally distributed, we have to ask why they're no longer here. The physical remains of northern populations fade from the Siberian archaeological record roughly 50,000 years ago, but genetic data suggest that southern Denisovan groups, living on isolated islands, may have survived until as recently as 15,000 years ago. Rather than direct violent extinction, the data points towards assimilation. As expanding populations of Homo sapiens moved into Asia, they consistently interbred with the native Denisovans. Over millennia, the smaller, distinct Denisovan populations simply dissolved into the much larger waves of modern humans. The Denisovans didn't vanish into thin air. Their genetic lineage vanished into us. Today, up to 4 to 6% of Denisovan DNA still exists within the modern human genome, appearing prominently in East Asian, Melanesian, and Aboriginal Australian populations. This surviving DNA provides clear benefits. Through a process called adaptive introgression, modern humans borrowed the highly specialized environmental survival traits the Denisovans had spent hundreds of thousands of years developing. You can see this clearly on the high-altitude Tibetan plateau. Modern Tibetans carry the Denisovan EPAS1 gene, a specific mutation that prevents blood from dangerously thickening, allowing them to easily thrive in the dangerously thin mountain air. In Southeast Asia, early Homo sapiens absorbed specific Denisovan immune system alleles, instantly granting them biological defenses against novel tropical diseases they had never encountered before leaving Africa. Humanity is not a solitary species walking a straight line to the present. We are a living mosaic of ancient populations, and the Denisovans are a biological mechanism actively keeping modern humans alive today.